Hi there, I'm Terry Cagle, and it's my pleasure to be able to record this video teaching about John chapter 18 in the midst of Snowmageddon. John 18 is a great chapter, and it's been a great joy to study it and get ready for today. So here we go. I divided it into 6 scenes, and it begins with a brief prologue in verse 1. When he had finished praying, Jesus left with his disciples and crossed the Kidron Valley. On the other side, there was a garden, and he and his disciples went into it. After his beautiful prayer that is recorded in chapter 17 that Gus White did a great job talking about last Sunday, we take a sharp turn in the book of glory, chapters 13 through 21 of John's Gospel. We are now going to enter the story that for chapters 18 and 19 turns more towards gory. We're in for some agony. Scene 1, Judas's moment of infamy, verses 2 through 11. Now Judas, who betrayed him, knew the place because Jesus had often met there with his disciples. So Judas came to the garden, guiding a detachment, a bunch of soldiers and some officials, temple guards, from the chief priests and the Pharisees. They were carrying torches, lanterns, and weapons. They were expecting a fight. Jesus, knowing all that was going to happen to him, I kind of have this picture of him rolling his eyes and going, "Oh, brother," went out and asked them, "Who is it you want?" Asking a question that he knew the answer to. "Jesus of Nazareth," they replied. "I am he," Jesus said. And Judas, the traitor, was standing there with them. Notice that in John there is no kiss. When Jesus said, "I am he," they drew back and fell to the ground. I think the Romans drew back, expecting an ambush, while the Jewish temple guards, in response to the divine name, "I am," fell to the ground. Again, he asked them, "Who is it you want?" "Jesus of Nazareth," they said. And Jesus answered, "I told you that I am he. If you are looking for me, then let these men go." This happened so that the words he had spoken would be fulfilled. "I have not lost one of those you gave me," from John 6, verse 39. Then Simon Peter, who had a sword, probably more of a dagger, drew it and struck the high priest's servant, cutting off his right ear. The servant's name was Malchus. Peter obviously used the sword like a fisherman, not a great swordsman. Jesus commanded Peter, "Put your sword away. Shall I not drink the cup the Father has given me?" And as we know, the ear was healed by Jesus, as Luke 22:51 tells us. And this is also the point in this encounter when the disciples exit stage right or left, as Matthew 26:56 and Mark 14:50 tell us. Scene 2, an arresting development. Then the detachment of soldiers with its commander and the Jewish officials arrested Jesus. They bound him. I don't understand why. And brought him first to Annas, who was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, the high priest that year. Caiaphas was the one who advised the Jewish leaders that it would be good if one man died for the people. That was back in John 11, verses 49 through 51. Annas was the most powerful high priest in first century Judaism. He served from AD 6 to 15. He had 5 sons who served as high priests, as well as Caiaphas, his son-in-law. He was the patriarch of an influential priestly family known for its wealth, power, and greed. Scene 3, not 1, verses 15 through 18. Simon Peter and another disciple, most feel that it's John, who, if you've read John's gospel, is very reluctant to mention his own name, were following Jesus. Because the disciple was known to the high priest, he went with Jesus into the high priest's courtyard. But Peter had to wait outside at the door. The other disciples, who was known to the high priest, came back, spoke to the servant girl on duty there, and brought Peter in. "You aren't one of this man's disciples too, are you?" she asked Peter. He replied, "I am not." It was cold, and the servants and officials stood around a fire they had made to keep warm. Peter also was standing with them, warming himself. Scene 4, big dog barking, verses 19 through 24. Meanwhile, the high priest, actually Annas, who had been high priest, questioned Jesus about his disciples and his teaching. This was a preliminary questioning that is unique to John's gospel. "I have spoken openly to the world," Jesus replied. "I always taught in synagogues or at the temple where all the Jews come together. I said nothing in secret. Why question me? Ask those who heard me. Surely they know what I said." When Jesus said this, one of the officials nearby slapped him in the face. "Is this the way you answer the high priest?" he demanded. The first blow to Jesus was by a fellow Jew. "If I said something wrong," Jesus replied, "testify as to what is wrong. But if I spoke the truth, why did you strike me?" Then Annas sent him bound to Caiaphas, the high priest. At this point, it's what I call the unseen scene, which is Caiaphas and the Sanhedrin. There's a time gap in John's gospel. This is reported in all the synoptic gospels, in Matthew 26, 57 through 67, Mark 14, 55 through 65, and in Luke 22, 63 through 71. But this is not in John's gospel. This is the illegal middle-of-the-night meeting of the high priest and the Sanhedrin, probably around 3 a.m. Scene 5, knots 2 and 3. This happened while Jesus was with Caiaphas. Meanwhile, Simon Peter was still standing there warming himself. So they asked him, "You aren't one of his disciples too, are you?" He denied it, saying, "I am not." One of the high priest's servants, a relative of the man whose ear Peter had cut off, challenged him. "Didn't I see you with him in the garden?" Again, Peter denied it. And at that moment, a rooster began to crow, as Jesus had said would happen in John 13, verse 38. This third and final denial happens an hour after the middle one, as Luke 22:59 points out. Scene 6, Pilate, part 1, verses 28 through 40. This happens early in the morning, probably around 6 a.m. Then the Jewish leaders took Jesus from Caiaphas to the palace of the Roman governor. By now it was early morning, and to avoid ceremonial uncleanness, they did not enter the palace, because they wanted to be able to eat the Passover. So Pilate came out to them and asked, "What charges are you bringing against this man?" "If he were not a criminal," they replied, "we would not have handed him over to you." A great non-answer. Pilate said, "Take him yourselves and judge him by your own law." "But we have no right to execute anyone," they objected. This took place to fulfill what Jesus had said about the kind of death he was going to die. Pilate left him outside grumbling. Pilate then went inside the palace, summoned Jesus, and asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" "Is that your own idea?" Jesus asked. "Or did others talk to you about me?" "Am I a Jew?" Pilate asked. "Your own people and chief priests, handed you over to me. What is it that you have done?" Jesus said, "My kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jewish leaders. But now my kingdom is from another place." "You are a king then," replied Pilate. Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. In fact, the reason I was born and came into the world is to testify to the truth. Everyone on the side of truth listens to me. I am the way, the truth, and the life," as he said earlier in John 14. "What is truth?" retorted cynical Pilate. With this, he went out again to the Jews gathered there and said, "I find no basis for a charge against him. But it is your custom for me to release to you one prisoner at the time of the Passover. Do you want to release the King of the Jews?" They shouted back, "No, not him. Give us Barabbas." Now Barabbas had taken part in an uprising. That's the end of chapter 18. A couple of thoughts. Barabbas was arrested as an insurrectionist, a word that we've heard a lot lately. This means that he resisted the Roman power structure that was crushing his community. He was not a lone ranger in this effort. He was part of a broad insurrection. Some of the apostles might have known of him. He had killed someone, but this act of murder should be understood only in light of the insurrection. He was not killing random people, but only as a Jewish freedom fighter, as the message refers to him in verse 40. He was a political prisoner who was in jail and set free by a frustrated, impatient, cynical Pilate because of the clamor of the Jewish crowd. But as Drew Hart points out in his book, Who Will Be a Witness? He writes, "When we liberate Barabbas from our own mental frameworks, we see Jesus anew and are graced with the opportunity of experiencing God's deliverance from status quo religion. When we liberate Barabbas, the doors of the church are opened as we are invited to encounter afresh the revolutionary Messiah who is able to save, deliver, and liberate all of us from every captivity and stronghold, and continues to invite each of us to join the Jesus-shaped struggle toward God's shalom." This is a stark contrast between a violent revolution seeking power and the nonviolent revolution that is following Jesus into his kingdom here on earth as in heaven. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons and daughters of God. In closing, let's return to the scene in the garden as we see some of the beautiful qualities of Jesus. First of all, it shows us his courage. The crowd of Roman and Jewish soldiers was huge, mammoth. Maybe as many as 700 men, all carrying torches, lanterns, weapons. It was crowded in the garden. He steps to them and volunteers that he is Jesus of Nazareth. It also shows us his authority. A single unarmed figure with a few guys who are shaking in their togas versus hundreds who are armed for war. Yet when he speaks, I am, they fall to the ground. He was the authority and still is. It also shows us that Jesus chose to die. Jesus, knowing all that was going to happen to him, he knew what was coming. He had told his guys about it on the way to Jerusalem. He stepped forward to die. It also shows his love. Jesus loved his clueless, scared, spitless guys, and in his darkest hour, his love says, if you're looking for me, then let these men go. Jesus is love. And then finally, it shows his trust and obedience. After the hapless Peter wings Malchus's ear, Jesus declares, put your sword away. Shall I not drink the cup the Father has given me? Jesus was faithful to death. Thank you for taking this journey with me through John 18. And it is my prayer that all of us will live into this wondrous story which we are entering into at this time of the year as we begin the observation of Lent, looking forward to the awesome fact of Easter and the fact that the tomb is still empty after all these years. God bless you. Have a great day. Thanks.